Hey y'all, it's Laura and welcome back to Scraplift Sunday, where we are going to be lifting this absolutely gorgeous layout by Sophie Delorme. Oh, I hope I said that right. It's such a beautiful name and I hope I didn't mess it up. But she is on the Cocoa Vanilla Studio design team and I have admired this layout of hers that I showed at the beginning since she posted it. It's absolutely stunning. And I thought I'd like to try recreating it, but of course I'm not going to use the exact same products that she used. I'm not going to completely scraplift her, but I want to scraplift the design, the ideas behind it. So I'm going to be using my November stash kit, which is a mix of my mini kit from the Secret Not Secret Kit Club, which is based on the Stamp Market collection Miss Modern, and is also mixed in with my stash because I am definitely trying to bust through my stash. So this paper here that I'm using as the center of my layout is from a DIY shop paper pad. It's a bunch of papers that look mixed media-y, and I went ahead and tossed this one in to see if I could use it. It was kind of my challenge piece. And then I have these two photos of my daughter and some scouts from her troop working on a scrapbooking badge. Now this was part of a different troop, not the one she's in currently. And I was very excited to be able to share with these girls a little bit of tips and tricks on getting started with scrapbooking, and they all did amazing. And I've kind of held off from scrapping these photos. I've actually had them printed for almost 2 years now, and mostly because they're very bright. There's a lot of colors going on, and I wasn't quite sure how best to scrap them. So they've been sitting in my stash for a while, and when I got to looking at this kit, which again I mentioned when I unboxed it at the beginning of the month, is not a collection that I would have purchased for myself, that I would have picked out and said, yes, that one's me all over. It's a little bright, a little bold. And when I pulled these photos out, flipping through what I had available already printed, they seem to match quite well with this kit. And I thought, okay, that's a sign. I need to go ahead and scrap these photos. So I am going to go ahead and scrap these photos, but first I did put a mat all around the outside with some gray cardstock. This is the same gray cardstock that I used behind the DIY shop paper, and by outlining both the photos and that paper with the same cardstock, it helps tie them together. It gives a little continuity through the layout, because I know there's going to be a lot of bold, bright colors on this one. I wanted to make sure I had some subtle neutrals in the background just to ground things a little bit, just to calm things down a little bit and give me a base to build up upon with some florals. Now I have a lot of options in this kit for florals. I fussy cut an entire page of these black and white florals. I have an ephemera pack from Fancy Pants that has these colored florals, and I fussy cut a 6x6 paper from the Miss Modern collection of brightly colored florals. So trying the three out, I realized I really preferred the color florals to the black and white, but when I started pulling them out, they just didn't click. They just didn't feel quite right. They were a little bit too feminine and girly, whereas these other larger pieces I'm going to start pulling out now that I fussy cut from the Miss Modern collection just seem to tie in perfectly, not only with the photos, but also with this background that I've created. And so I decided to go ahead and roll with it. I will tell you the one thing about this background paper that I did not like was this text box that I have put my photos over. I'm not sure why it bothered me quite so much, but it just did. It was super dark. It just didn't really add anything to the layout. That 8 at the bottom left of my photos, I'm just going to let it sit there. I'm going to let it be. I'm just pretending it's part of the background, which of course it is, but I'm not acknowledging it. It has no significance. It's just being allowed to sit there and be a part of the background. I just think it's nice and subtle, and I think I get away with it. So once I get all of these florals arranged along the side, just like Sophie did, then I'm going to go ahead and glue them all down, and I'm going to have a cluster to the right of my photos and then up at the top, which is mimicking the look that she had. Now, I'm not using frames like she did because I may have just done a whole layout full of frames that you guys will see later this month and was feeling a little framed out. So I decided instead to stick to these little banner pieces. I do end up using part of a frame at the top actually, but not the whole thing. So now that I've got things pretty much where I think I want them to be, I'm going to go ahead and start embellishing around my photos. So I've got this little journaling spot that's left over from a previous layout. Went ahead and tucked it back behind my photos just to add another pop of that bright yellow, just like that flower in the center. That way I've got at least 2 hits of that yellow around the page. I found a couple of gold hearts. I will end up tucking those into my floral clusters. And I grabbed the last few florals from this collection to add up here at the top. Now, when creating a floral layout, it's really important that you think about the balance of the florals and the leaves. So if you have a heavy red section and a heavy yellow section, that's not quite as interesting to look at or as dynamic as having them blended together. So that's something that I'm going to focus on a lot when I start gluing those pieces down, is making sure that the red spreads all the way through the florals and the yellow and the orange are just kind of equally dispersed amongst the florals. So just something to keep in mind. I also had these titles that were left over from an old Elle Studio paper, and I really wanted to get some of these on the page because the colors are perfect. They're so perfect. So I decided to go ahead and make them work, and they sort of make sense. So the title ends up being All the Details Noted, and there'll be a little bit more to that. It's a very long title, but it starts out All the Details Noted, which I thought was perfect because we're documenting their memories in these scrapbooks. So I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut out all of these letters to make my title. No, I won't make you watch all of that because it might be a little painful, but if you do want some tips and tricks on fussy cutting, I'll try to remember to below link the tutorial that I made on fussy cutting that has a bazillion tips and tricks to make it easier and faster to fussy cut, because let me tell you, it is my favorite technique. You get so much more bang from your buck when you can fussy cut out some embellishments from your pattern papers. So now I've got this little partial frame up here at the top, and that's going to be my little holder for these florals. Just kind of tucks them in neatly at the top and gives them a place to land. A little bit of structure underneath all that florally goodness. So now that I'm getting all of those bits and pieces glued down, did a lot of that gluing off camera, tucked some gold hearts into my florals as well. I'm going to bring in these Elle Studio puffy stickers that I just picked up from them in my last haul because I was really excited to help support some small businesses. I don't know about y'all, but everyone has been affected by this pandemic, and it is so important to me that if I can help support some of my favorite scrappy little businesses, I do. And so this was part of that haul, just talking about the different little shops that I enjoy and support, and giving you some encouragement to do the same if you are able. I definitely don't want you to spend what you can't afford or make you feel bad if you cannot spend anything, but it is always great when we can support our small businesses in the scrappy world. We need them to keep our hobby strong. So I'm going to bring in 3 word phrase stickers here. One to add to my title. I told you it was going to get a bit longer. And it becomes All the Details Noted. Adore you always. Which the top and the bottom don't have a whole lot to do with each other, but I like the sentiment nonetheless. Now to give this just a little bit more texture, I'm going to go ahead and add in a border with my T-square ruler and some faux stitching lines so it looks like I've stitched around the perimeter of this layout, just like Sophie did with hers. She actually did real stitching. I'm doing some faux stitching because I'm impatient and have not figured out how to thread my sewing machine. we're still working on that. So a little bit of faux stitching around the perimeter gives it just a really nice little bit of definition and the appearance of sewed texture. And then I'll add in a whole bunch of journaling lines for myself, not only to reflect the original layout, which had a lot of journaling on it, but also because this one actually does have quite a bit to say. I know, imagine that, me having a lot to say. Unbelievable. No one believes it, Laura. Just go on. So I'm going to go ahead and add the date, and then I'm going to just start by splattering and scattering and finishing up this layout. I always finish up my layouts with some tiny little detail pieces, as well as some Nuvo drops and ink splatter. And for me, those tiny details do so much to define and to finish off a page. And those little details I really do think are the most important. It's my favorite part when you get to the end and you can add those tiny bits and pieces. Now to finish off the title, I have these gold letter stickers. They're not phrase stickers, they're just letter stickers. And I'm going to add them to my title here so that it makes a little bit more sense to have Adore You Always as a kind of a subtitle underneath. I also think that it's nice that it adds a third hit of gold on the page because I have those two gold hearts, one in the top floral cluster, one in the bottom floral cluster. And so I think it's nice to have it in 3 spots on the page. So I will straighten out those letters a little bit off camera before coming in here with my gold Nuvo. I absolutely love gold Nuvo. If you've never used it before, it's very similar to the effect of enamel dots, but you get to control the size. If you're interested in Nuvo, I would definitely check out a neutral like a silver or gold, whichever you think you'd use more, or a black or white, whichever one again you think you'd use more, to try it out. Don't buy all the colors until you're sure you love it. Now here I come in with some ink splatter in gold as well, just around the floral clusters, and that's it for this scrap lift. I'll have still photos at the end. Be sure to check out my partner in crime, Miranda, who is going to have hers up as well. Until next time, bye guys.